Hi everyone, Comic Reviewer here, once again doing another Halloween film review, and this one is on the 2008 film Quarantine. Now, as you know, Quarantine is a 2008 typical run-in-the-mill found footage film, horror film that was directed and co-written by John Eric Doldal, as well as being a remake of the Spanish 2007 film REC. And the premise of the film is meant to follow Angela and her cameraman Scott, who Angela is meant to be a reporter and her cameraman Scott is the cameraman. We see how they're filming their report on the night shift in the Los Angeles Fire Department. At first, everything seems fine, everything's alright, until they get an emergency call at the local apartment building where we see how the landlord hears screams from one of the residents, which of course ends up with them being attacked and them having to be quarantined in the building, not being able to allow to leave. So of course we kind of see how Angela and some of the others try to find out what's really going on and try to figure out what's really behind all this kind of commotion. And I think for the most part, I would say Quarantine, is kind of ironic with the COVID-19 thing, as well as being kind of a foreshadowing to Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, as we kind of see how a virus is let out into the world, and we kind of see how people are basically quarantined inside the building, and kind of seeing how the main hero has to kind of survive and kind of get through the other infected. And I think for the most part, I would say Jennifer Carpenter does work as Angela. Like, you can tell she tries to kind of keep things together. She's trying to, keep things calm and all that. And I think for the most part, I would say the film is just another typical found footage film. And I think the thing with found footage films, they're like a dime a dozen, where everything starts off fine, everything starts off happy-go-lucky, but then we kind of get into the more darker element. And I think films like Paranormal Activity, The Devil's Inside, Cloverfield and that have done this sort of thing before. And I think for the most part I do give it credit, as they kind of show how dangerous what the virus is and how people can easily be dangerously affected. And I think for the most part the game does kind of have that Resident Evil feel, which I think does work, and it does kind of remind me of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. And I think the film does hit close to home, given the fact of being quarantined and that in my house during the whole virus outbreak, which I was pretty much used to as I was doing my film reviews and all that. And I think for the most part, I would say it's surprising enough that in 2 years' time, we would basically see another quarantine film known as Quarantine 2, The Terminal. And I would say Angela's character does kind of remind me a bit of Ethan Winters, or kind of reminds me of a character I would see in the more recent Resident Evil games, as it's basically a character trying to survive in a kind of like infected but kind of dangerous apartment. So I think for the most part I would say Quarantine is a film that doesn't live up to the height, but it's interesting to see Jennifer Carpenter doing something else than Dexter and something before Mortal Kombat. So I think this film definitely deserves a thumbs up. Still good and still alright. So, Comic Reviewer here, signing out.